Mr Acting Speaker.
Member for Whitsunday.
Thank you, Mr Acting Speaker. I'm pleased to be able to contribute to this bill, but also, Mr Acting Speaker, to do that in Far North Queensland and North Queensland, a electorate that I represent. And I represent 4% of my population of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, as well as a significant proportion of Australian South Sea Islanders, the largest population which I share with the member for Mackay, and I'm proud to also share their voice in my contribution today. I too would like to acknowledge the Yuwi people who represent the lands of Mackay and part of my electorate from Habana, Rural View, right through to Cape Hillsborough and to the O'Connell River, the Nauru people that represent the beautiful Whitsunday Islands, and the Gia people from the O'Connell River north to Proserpine and to the north of my electorate. I'd also like to acknowledge Uncle George Tonga, who is a Yuwi traditional custodian of Yuwi land, and his leadership across our Mackay and broader Mackay Isaac Whitsunday community, and in particular the initiative that I have been very proud to be involved in my former role and capacity as Deputy Mayor of Mackay Regional Council and also Chair of the Natural Environment Advisory Committee to Council, where we saw the establishment of the Traditional Owner Reference Group, where we see a collaboration between traditional custodians coming together, working with not just local government but also land management, and as part of their work, their ability to be able to cohesively use their conviction and passion, connection to land and water, and how they have been able to educate not just myself, but many community leaders, many young and future leaders of our community, from school groups right through to our local rugby league club that often take visits out on country, where sites have allowed a reconnection to country, where they have been utilised to reconnect young people who maybe were taking the wrong path, where we have seen incredible early intervention by our elders in our community. And because of that, and because we see how that connection to country, how through truth-telling, how through sharing of culture can reconnect, I am pleased to see that the state will be progressing a path to treaty, to be able to provide people from all cultural backgrounds a deeper understanding, a sense of place, a connection, a sense of belonging, and in doing so, understanding as well some of the very tough conversations and tough stories that we need to hear. That statewide truth-telling and the acknowledgement of intergenerational trauma, the impact that that has had on communities. And Mr Acting Speaker, it's important to note that each community is unique by both geography, both culture, both family and connections. And I hope that as part of the setting up of the Institute, and I take and note the committee's recommendations around language and to ensure that we connect correctly with language, I do certainly hope that this is a whole-of-state approach and that it is not just left to South East Queensland. It is very timely that we are in Cairns in the far north, and I had the absolute privilege of visiting communities in the far north over the course of my last 2 years as a member of this House, visiting and meeting with the Mayor of Marpoon, the Mayor of Mornington Island, the Mayor of Yarrabah, the Mayor of the Torres Strait, and speaking to those community leaders who at times are frustrated, feel their voice is not heard, their advocacy is not heard, because they are dealing with the day-to-day leadership of their own community and the very important priorities. And I hear many in this House have raised those today, whether they're from the crossbench, the government, or in fact the opposition. $300 million investment in Path to Treaty is an enormous figure, Mr Acting Speaker, that could contribute so significantly as well, not just to past healing, but to what is occurring right now in community across this state, where we have people not living in the standard of housing that we should come to expect in a modern Queensland, where we have children that are not accessing education that our city counterparts should expect, or healthcare, Mr Acting Speaker, where we see young people not being invested in the same way because of the geographical distance that they reside in. Mr Acting Speaker, it's important to note also that I think we should throw political correctness out the door when it comes to what we're getting to the point of this bill is, which is truth-telling. So as part of that, it would be remiss of me not to acknowledge the truth of the community that I live and serve in Mackay, and to acknowledge also the very important history that is intertwined with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture in my community, which is Australian South Sea Islander culture. I had an individual pass comment to me that, remember, they're migrants. They're different. Well, in my community of Mackay, their history and the way in which they were brought to this nation, their deep family connections now with both Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families needs also to be told the truth of what has occurred in my region and in other parts of Queensland to the Australian South Sea Islander community, the truth about what Robert Towns and Captain John Mackay did, the truth about blackbirding, the intergenerational trauma that that has contributed to. And when I meet a grandson of an Australian South Sea Islander who's served in the Vietnam War and hear the stories that he was not permitted, along with his Aboriginal colleagues and friends and comrades, to enter the same pub as a white person and to be able to heal and connect on the trauma, not just of his own culture and background and what was endured, but also then after serving our nation. Those are the truths that also deserve to be told, Mr Acting Speaker. And I certainly urge the Minister and I urge the government as part of Path to Treaty that it is important to also acknowledge the Australian South Sea Islanders' connection as well to culture and community in particular areas like mine in Mackay. Mr Acting Speaker, I'd also like to pinpoint and highlight the local government LGAQ's recommendations as part of the consultation in the committee. And having served as a former Deputy Mayor, I do believe at times that local government and local representatives are best placed to engage and consult, and at times are more trusted than many of us here in this House or our federal counterparts, because they are on the ground dealing with priorities and issues every day. They are the ones connected. Many of them are family members or leaders. And it is concerning when we talk about how committed we are to a process, yet the committee outlined the lack of consultation, the lack of timing, and when I speak to those in my own community that didn't even know or understand what Path to Treaty is, and then as a member that represents that community to be criticised that we are not speaking openly on our decision of voice, Mr Deputy Speaker, I will not have it. We want details. My community, my Aboriginal elders want details too. Nobody has consulted with them on what treaty means, what does voice mean. So while we are a large and a diverse state, Mr Acting Speaker, $300 million commitment should go a long way to ensuring that every Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community is consulted with in a meaningful, co-designed way, Mr Acting Speaker. Otherwise, this will be nothing more than lip service and political correctness that will deliver no outcomes. And what we want to see, and certainly as a proud Far North Queenslander, is I want to see the boys and girls in this House that are watching today. I want to see the boys and girls from Mornington Island. I want to see young people from the Torres Strait have the same opportunity as white counterparts do right now. So truth-telling in history is important, but to the generation of today, we must not forget nor not hear those voices of what is important to them and why we need to all rise above what sometimes is ludicrous politicking so that we can all make informed decisions. I no less represent anyone else in this House who holds a seat. That is why we are named by our electorates, Mr Deputy Speaker, because we represent all people of all cultures and backgrounds in those electorates. With that, I thank the House, I thank the committee in particular. I understand some of the stories heard were quite traumatising, and I thank those that contributed, and I look forward to seeing the outcomes of Path to Treaty.